Welcome to another OU Insider Under the Visor Sooners pregame podcast. I almost said YouTube Live. My name is Brandon Drum. I'm here with Parker Thune, Travis Davidson, as usual. And this podcast is powered by Olipop. You can go find your Olipops at any one of the Target, Whole Food, Walmart, and Sprouts if you're in the Oklahoma, Texas region. Or you can go to drinkolipop.com, type in the promo code CHAMPU20, get 20% off any of the 15 magnificent flavors that they
16.
provide.
They brought
16
crisp
now.
apple back. They brought crisp apple back. It's a seasonal flavor, quite delicious from what I hear. I haven't actually gotten the chance to try it yet. Probably going to order a case as soon as we get off the air because I am very eager to give it a try. I have to imagine I'm big on sparkling apple cider, because I don't actually drink. So like for instance, New Year's Eve, sparkling apple cider is the move for somebody like me. So I have to imagine it's along those same lines.
There you go.
Travis, are you drinking an unsanctioned beverage right there?
It's blurred. Yes. We don't allow that on OU Insider.
You're muted, Trav. You're muted. You got to unmute yourself.
Keep it blurred.
It is blurred because it is not an Olipop. So that's that next.
It's hilarious. And by the way, people, those watching it on YouTube, that is not on purpose. It literally just happened like that, just by happenstance. So
the Olipop god came and blurred my drink, but it's non-alcoholic. I promise. It's 9 a.m. So it's non-alcoholic and it's not a game day. So yeah,
there you go. 9 a.m. on game days. There's a you kind of have a little.
That's why I added that.
You can get away with drinking at 9 a.m. on a game day. I think that's a rule I hear.
Absolutely.
I've never abided by those rules back in my day.
You got something in your eye, Brandon?
Yeah, sorry. All right, guys. Oklahoma plays Cincinnati this weekend. They are the eighth. I believe they're the eighth ranked total offense or rushing offense. Excuse me, or maybe total. I can't remember off the top of my head. Rushing in college football. They are one of the better offenses in college football as a whole. They have a dual threat quarterback in Emery Jones. They've got a great wide receiver in Xavier Henderson. They have a fantastic defensive line, maybe arguably the best defensive line Oklahoma is going to face all season outside of Texas, and maybe even better than Texas, led by Dante Corleone, the Godfather. That dude is a bad mother scuther. He is, man. And the coolest part is he is sponsored by Godfather's Pizza, which is awesome.
That's fantastic. That is what the Lord intended NIL for right there.
Exactly what he said in one of his interviews. It's what NIL was supposed to be about.
Uh-huh.
So
I bet he's wishing his last name was Dante Bugatti at this point, but Godfather's Pizza works fine.
Yeah, I think, and he's also sponsored by excuse me, there's I guess it's called Skyline or whatever that's there in Cincinnati that's really famous.
Oh yeah, the Skyline chili.
The chili, right? Yeah.
What are the odds you down a bowl of Skyline chili this weekend, Trav?
I mean, yeah, it's a lock.
Really?
Go ahead. It's a lock. Yeah.
Really?
I mean, I talk to people from Cincinnati. The one thing I always do on Twitter is I ask who lives in Cincinnati about a couple weeks before, as I'm trying to secure the remote location and whatnot. And then I kind of keep those conversations going all right, recommendations, y'all are the locals. What's up? And I know Skyline gets a bad rap, but there's a reason that they're on every corner. It's not because people aren't buying it. It's not because people aren't eating it. So
it might just be because the people of Cincinnati don't have good taste in food.
Could be, but I mean, these people aren't English. You know what I mean? They have option. They have other good food options.
They obviously have sanitation there because if they didn't with Skyline Chili on every freaking corner, that place would be
okay. Low blow. I'll tell you, dude, Trav, have you ever been to Lambert's Cafe in Ozark, Missouri?
The home of the Throne Roll, right?
The home of the Throne Roll.
I've not, but I need to go. I need to go at some point. I'll be going through Missouri. I'm actually leaving today, staying in Branson, seeing the folks, and then I'll drive up to Cincinnati tomorrow morning. And yeah, have some Skyline chili. I'm excited about it.
So I ate at Lambert's last night. That's where we stopped on our way. I went with the white beans and ham. Good old Southern soul food. It was fantastic. And my meal, the thing is, this is one of those, I call them baby face moments because I don't look as old as I am. And so last night I'm sitting down, looking over the Lambert's menu, picking my meal. And so the meal I got is called something Southern. And the main entree is white beans and ham, right? And so I'm like, you know what? That sounds really good. I'm going to roll with that. Well, my meal is supposed to be served, and don't ask me why this is. It's the only meal on the menu like this. But my meal is supposed to be served with my choice of either a King Edward's cigar or a stick of big red chewing gum.
They gave you the
So
gum.
they bring the meal out. They just brought me the stick of gum. They didn't even ask. Didn't even ask.
I'm more fascinated that that's what your meal comes with.
I know. I have no idea why.
That's amazing. Oh my gosh.
That's fantastic. That is a story you'll get to tell forever. Like, that is awesome. Yeah, I'm 24, 25 years old, and I got treated like I was 16. That's cool. I mean, that is awesome. I will tell you,
When we were in Vegas for OT7, I got asked if Parker was my kid in photos. So
no.
yeah, I was like, yeah, because he was sitting there eating like a waffle at breakfast or something, and he just, looked. I was like, no, I don't. I was like, these are people who know me. I'm like, you would know if I had a grown child. Like, what are we doing here? But yeah, not surprised. Not surprised that somebody thought you were a kid.
And how old are you?
24.
No, I know how old you are. How old are you, Travis?
Oh, 34.
So there you go. We got 10 years between us.
Yeah, I don't know.
Trav, you were getting around in middle school, huh?
No,
Man, that was elementary, man.
School, bro. That's elementary.
That was elementary, man. Darnaby
age.
didn't know what hit it, man. Darnaby Rangers. I was going nuts.
Golly, yeah. My 8-year-old will be a 4th grader at 10. So that is weird. Weird to have somebody ask that. That's your child.
You know who's I think also 34? Emery Jones. He's been in college a long time.
That's a pretty brilliant segue right there, first off.
Very well done.
And
he played Oklahoma in the 2020 bowl game as a redshirt sophomore, I want to believe, or a sophomore.
Yeah, well, that was garbage time after Kyle Trask had tossed 3 picks and really worn out his welcome on his way out the door with Florida fans. That was the last game he played in a Gator uniform.
Dylan Gabriel and Emery Jones are going to just sit in rocking chairs outside the stadium for the pregame and think back of all their times in college football together before they go in for warmups.
I have to say, if you're Kyle Trask, you have to hate the University of Oklahoma, because not only did they waste you in your final game and you threw 3 picks, you think when Tom Brady leaves, you're going to be the guy, and they bring in Oklahoma's own Baker Mayfield to beat you out.
Which, again, Oklahoma is probably primarily responsible for tanking Kyle Trask's draft stock, because he was, I mean, I don't know that it was a frequent conversation among experts, but there were a few folks that were tossing Kyle Trask's name around in the number 1 overall pick conversation.
Mm-hmm. And then and the Cotton Bowl happened.
Yeah, the Cotton Bowl happened.
Yep.
But all right, so Emery Jones, you can tell that Venables and that defense respects him, though, regardless of how old he is, regardless of how long he's played college football. They respect his legs. They respect his arms. They've talked about it a lot this week. The phrases gap integrity and gap discipline have been echoed I don't know how many times in the interviews. And it's something you have to account for. Because if you are not gap discipline and you don't have gap integrity against him, he will take it to the house on you. And he will do it very quickly. And he's done it already this year. And that's something I think Miami, Ohio. I was watching Scott Satterfield's middle of the week presser with Oklahoma, and Travis, I'm sure you saw it too. And he literally talked about how well Miami of Ohio played the QB run game and how disciplined they were on their defense between the 15-yard line and the goal line. Like, they did not allow Emery Jones to do what he normally does. And and he talked about how you can be gap disciplined and you can be unsound. But if you're one-on-ones, you lose those. And Cincinnati and Emery were losing those for some odd reason. Maybe it was lightning in a bottle for Miami, Ohio. I have no idea. But it happened, and they lost because of it. They tackled well. If you don't tackle well against him, if you don't tackle well against Cincinnati's run game, it is going to be a long day for Oklahoma. Long day. Period.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the inside the 15-yard line, because here's the thing. It's not like Miami of Ohio was played poor defense and they were undisciplined and everything like that. And then all of a sudden they looked down at their feet and saw they were in the red zone and said, boom, I'm ready to have gap integrity. I'm ready to tackle better, everything like that. That's the nature of what Cincinnati does. Like, if you don't let them, like, the full field, you can get a lot more downfield, right? Like, you can send routes out, you can get more room to run for the quarterback. You can escape a little bit more because everything's so spread out, right? Like, in the red zone, the reason it's so hard to score there is because everything is compacted, right? So I think some of that is like just the nature of what Cincinnati was trying to do. It gets harder to do in the red zone because you don't have all that space to move around. So I think, yes, tackling key. I think Danny Stutzman's going to be massive in this game. And man, if you just make him throw, Emery Jones cannot throw the football. And I know, like, we need to respect the quarterback, and this coaching staff has a ton of respect for Emery Jones, but he's thrown 2 touchdowns. He started the year with 7 touchdowns in one game, and everybody's like, "Ooh, Emery Jones, man, he's finally found it," right? Well, I think it was East Kentucky or something like that, and 5 touchdowns through the air, 2 on the ground. Since then, just to talk about through the air, he's had 2 touchdowns and 3 interceptions, including last game, 0 touchdowns through the air and 2 interceptions. Like, if you can just make him throw, I trust our defensive backs to actually make plays down the field, even though they do have some talent at the wide receiver position. I just don't see. I think if you take away Emery's legs, he becomes extremely pedestrian.
And I think we all kind of had that thought going into the year when you look at games like this, not only Cincinnati, but UCF, right, Trav? And you think about a mobile guy like John Rice Plumlee. Those are the types of quarterbacks. Those are the very types that have given Oklahoma problems in years past, because the Sooners struggle to contain. They struggle to prevent guys like that from making plays when they get outside the pocket. I always think back to the West Virginia game last year and Garrett Green coming in cold off the bench and leading the Mountaineers to what was probably, all things considered, the worst loss of the season for Oklahoma. That was just, I mean, I'll put it to you this way. I had a very good source tell me Neil Brown was supposed to get fired the next day because they had already chalked that one up as a loss to Oklahoma. That win from West Virginia's perspective saved Neil Brown's job. But that's how dire the situation at West Virginia was. Neil Brown's epitaph was already written, and Garrett Green and the inept Oklahoma front seven enabled him to, well, I mean, shoot, he's still hanging around. So they enabled him to hang around all the way until at least September 22nd, 2023. Now, I think where you have even more confidence in Oklahoma to shut down that aspect of Emery Jones' game, and a ton more confidence than you would have had in this defense to do the same in years past, is when you look at what they did last week against Tulsa. 5 interceptions. I know, right? The instant downplay, if you will, there is, well, it's Tulsa. Okay, that's all fine and well. But some of the plays that I've watched the Sooners defensive backs make down the field through 3 games, particularly in that game against Tulsa, Kendall Dolby made a gorgeous interception. And Brent Venables said it after the game. Those are the types of plays that we did not make a year ago. And so if you're getting that type of aggressive play from your defensive backs downfield, and you have guys that aren't going to get lost, aren't going to miss an assignment, aren't going to get completely out-muscled for a ball in midair, and you got guys that can get up and not only bat down a pass, but come up with an interception, create a turnover. If that's the type of play you're getting from your secondary, then yes, the recipe for victory against a team like Cincinnati is very simple. Make Emery Jones throw the ball. Make him push the ball downfield. Because at that point, I think you do have a ton of trust in your defensive backs, given what you've seen already in 2023, that is not a manner in which Cincinnati is going to beat you. That's not the way that they're going to win this football game.
No, the air, obviously the OU secondary, I do think you have to account for Xavier Henderson no matter what. I think he's a really good wide receiver. Don't account for him at your own peril. I dare you on that one, because he will win 50-50 balls. He's fast. He's got speed. He will get behind the defense. And at that point, as long as Emery Jones can play catch with him, that doesn't matter, right? Like, you still have to account for guys like that. And I think that's where it gets tricky. And we talked about this last night, because people on the chat during the live were asking, okay, do you spy Emery Jones? And I said, I don't know that you do that, because you take a piece off the board. Essentially, you take a chess piece off the board if you're Oklahoma, whether it be Jaron Kanek or Danny Stutzman. And I don't think you can afford to do that, or even Peyton Bowen at Cheetah. So I don't know that you can afford to do that. I think at some point you just have to man on man, a mano a mano, gap integrity, gap discipline. Let your linebackers use their speed. Danny Stutzman's fast. The guy runs a 4.5, 4.6 type. I mean, he's a fast 235-pound human being. And Jaron Kanek is a freaking blazer at 4.3, 4.4. Like, he's one of the fastest guys on the team. So you have to feel like your guys are better than theirs, and you have to tackle in space. That's what it gets down to, is tackling in space. Something we saw Oklahoma get worse at as 2022 season went along last year. And it was this time last year that happened. Exact time. Week four. Come in thinking Oklahoma is going to just run through Kansas State. And all of a sudden we look up at the scoreboard and it's 21-7. And you're going, what in the hell just happened? And it had a lot to do with not being able to tackle. How many missed sacks did Oklahoma have in that K-State game against Adrian Martinez? How many?
I mean, a significant amount.
It was double digits. I felt like it was insane amounts. Like, literally, he was just like he had oil or grease on his outside of his pants, and they were just sliding off of him. And
could have had it.
Say what?
I said he could have had it. Could have oiled him up before the game. We need to get some.
I don't put it past anybody these days to do anything. But that's neither here nor there. The point is that you can't have that happen again. You can't. And we had this talk because it's super weird, but like tonight in Little League, they're going up against my team. My son's going up against a team that has a really fast quarterback. And I say this because Teddy Lehman said this last night, or on one of his podcasts I was listening to. The guy knows football, and he's so right. And I got to thinking about it, and I got watching a couple of the games that Oklahoma has played recently. And you can't go past the quarterback. You can't rush past the ball. That's something Oklahoma continues to struggle with. They over pursue. And against Emery Jones, that pocket collapses and wraps around him, and there's big, wide, gaping holes for him to run through. You got problems because he's going to take off and he's going to get a first down. It could be 3rd and 20, and he's going to get 20. And that's something that Oklahoma has to be disciplined in. You cannot over pursue. You cannot get so far upfield that you've taken yourself essentially out of the play as an edge rusher or even as a defensive tackle. And we've even seen that this year with Oklahoma. Danny Stutzman against in as great as he played, twice I watched him blitz and run right by Tulsa's quarterback, whoever was in there at that point. Run right by him. Literally, they're standing there and he's back here. And I'm like, how do you do that? Like, I get that you're playing hard, you're playing fast, but you have to play in control. Against a quarterback like this, you have to play in control. Because if you don't, he's going to kill you. And I know that we're harping on this as the first Big 12 game for Cincinnati, and we keep talking about all this stuff. And it's because Cincinnati has the talent to beat Oklahoma, and we're trying to get this in the Oklahoma fans' heads. Like, they have the ability to do that. Just because they lost to Miami of Ohio, like who did K-State lose to last year?
Tulane.
They lost to Tulane at home.
Yeah. Tulane, okay.
Tulane was great.
Infinitely better
I
than
get
what
it.
Miami of Ohio
I get it. But Oklahoma also ended up 6-7 after their 3-0. So let's not get it twisted. That started the, proverbial waterfall or avalanche that proceeded after that game. So you have to take that in consideration. And that 3-0 talk has been loud between Parker. You've been at the interviews. Like, they're taking that seriously, aren't they? Like, they've got to get past the 3-0 mark.
Well, because I think they realized that the discourse surrounding this football team last year was very similar to what it is this year, which is, hey, Oklahoma looks good. Oklahoma looks borderline dominant. Shoot, people were saying last year after the Nebraska game, credible people, national voices, Colin Cowherd,
number 2
was
team
saying that Oklahoma might be the second best team in the country at that point. So, I mean, to go back to the infamous Nick Saban metaphor, you got to be able to sift through the rat poison. And the Sooners, I think to a certain extent got caught up in it a year ago, and they got a little out in front of their skis, and they also peaked too early, right? And we talked about that. They were dog tired down the stretch. And I think there's been a more significant emphasis on, and this is kind of a principle across the board that I think you're seeing with Oklahoma this year that you didn't see a year ago. I think there's just an emphasis on keeping some stuff in the reservoir, if you will, and holding things back, whether that is personnel or scheming or just energy with these guys. I don't think you're going to see them peak as early as they did a year ago. And I don't think over the second half of the season, you're going to see them play as exhausted as they were playing last year. So there are differences between the ways that they approach this 3-0 start in 2023 and the ways that they approached last year's 3-0 start. But also I think they understand as well as anybody, especially the guys that were in that locker room a year ago and are holdovers from that 6-17. 3-0 means virtually nothing. There are nearly 40 teams in college football right now that are 3-0. And so if you want to be one of the last few standing and you want to be able to run this thing to 8-0, 9-0, 10-0, Oklahoma hasn't started 8-0, guys, since 2004. It's been almost 2 decades. So if you want to sustain a run like this, rather than just having a hot start be a nice footnote to a decent season that culminates in a bowl berth, then you can't get caught looking ahead. You can't get caught up in what you did last week, individually or as a team. You have to approach every single weekend with the mindset. And you also can't get caught up in what your opponent did last week.
Mm-hmm.
You have to approach every single game with the mindset of, okay, we're going to take care of business. We're going to leave no doubt. We're going to step on throats. And there is a certain degree of confidence that necessarily comes attached to that. And I think what leaves me optimistic right now is that I see some of that confidence, some of that swagger in this team right now that I don't know that they had a year ago, even though they did start 3-0. And even though they did look good, they've got a swagger this year that they didn't have last season.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up the 3-0 thing because, well, first of all, when you say credible national voices, you cannot then follow that up with Colin Coward.
Okay, point taken.
So, but Joel Klatt, I'll say that, was agreeing with him that day on his show that Oklahoma looked like the second best team outside of Georgia last year. So I get it. My issue is the 3-0 start is, everybody says 3-0 and then we went 6-7, 3-0 and then we went 6-7. 3-0 is the exact same thing we did last year. Sure, technically, yes, we went 3-0, but last year we were not top 5 in offensive or in scoring offense. We were not top 5 in scoring defense. We were not number 1 in the country in third down conversions. We were not tackling at a completely, black and white, night and day difference than we are last year.
I disagree with that part. I disagree with that part because
count the missed tackles. They're completely different.
No. I get what you're saying this year compared to last year. No, I get that. But if you put 2022 versus 2021, that was one of the main points that people were talking about in the first 3 games is how much better they were tackling than the previous regime on defense.
That is true.
Right. But you take that, okay, they were saying they were tackling better. Just the numbers are staggering.
Yeah, it's way different. No, I agree with that.
It's way different. So, with that, the turnovers, even looking downfield at the corner, the ball hawking that's going on, the aggressive play, getting your head turned around, not all 3-0s are created equally. And I think that's where I'm a bit hung up on it is, well, started 3-0 last year, could totally go 6-7 again this year. If we go 6-7 this year after this 3-0 start, I might just be done. I'll quit radio. I'll quit.
No, don't say those things because.
But that's what I'm saying. It's like,
is Brent on the hot seat if that happens?
Well, I think it's just a little bit lazy to be like, hey, 3-0 last year, 3-0 this year. Totally, the same situation. And I'm not saying y'all are being lazy. I'm saying that there's so much more to the conversation.
The players and the coaches are even saying it. They're talking. They're putting emphasis on it.
Yeah, it's also their job to motivate. So with that, yes, don't rest on your 3-0 start. But when you just look at the analysis of what's going on, this team is way ahead of what we were last year. And even looking at, you can explain it away as far as we look good through 3 games last year. Who were our backups? Who were our backup safeties? Who were our backup linebackers? Who were that is the difference. Know going forward that you have significantly better depth. So you're not going to, and Parker brought it up, you're not going to see the absolute off a cliff fall off that you saw in the depth like you saw last year. So like I said, 3-0, absolutely a number. Absolutely, we started, but they're not all created equally. And the people that say, hey, you know what? I don't care. Talk to me after Texas. I'm not going to be happy with this team until I see them beat Texas. You know what? I choose to be happy with my team if they play well. I choose to be happy if they play well. I can't imagine going through what Texas would be almost halfway through the season and still refusing to be pleased with what you see. It's okay to be happy, people. Yeah, you might set yourself up to get hurt, but hey, is it better to have loved and lost than never loved at all?
It's the old recruiting adage as when it comes to defensive line. Let me say that the old past recruiting adage when it comes to defensive line recruiting, where they're like, I'm ready to hurt again when it comes to 5-star or elite top 250 defensive linemen shunning the Oklahoma Sooners, which we have seen the exact opposite in 2024. Not to derail it into a recruiting podcast or anything, but Danny Okoye did commit to Oklahoma yesterday. So
that's
was
not derailing, Brandon. We can talk about that.
I mean, that's a big get, right? Like that is huge. Like they literally have David Stone, Nigel Smith, Danny Okoye, Jaden Jackson, and Wyatt Gilmore all in the same class. And Wyatt Gilmore, as we have talked about, Parker, on the podcast a ton, the way he's playing his senior film, he has a chance. He has a chance to move up into that elite 4-star status and create the perception that whether they flip Williams Winery, Dominic McKinley, or go after somebody else and flip them down the stretch, the D-line class is elite as it stands right now. The best D-line class Oklahoma's had in 2 decades, maybe. I mean, 2018, 2020 was really good. 2018 was really good. 2011, 2010, I want to say one of those two with Jordan Phillips, Jordan Wade, and all those guys was really good. And 2006 with Gerald McCoy, all those were really good. 2000, Tommy Harris, Dusty Dvorak, Jimmy Wilkerson, those were all, that was an elite D-line class as well. But on paper, is this not one of the best D-line classes of all time at Oklahoma?
All right,
is it the best D-line class in the nation right now?
I think personally it is when you look through the usual suspects, right? I mean, Georgia, it's a better defensive line class than Georgia right now. It's a better defensive line class than Alabama right now. It's a better defensive line class than Texas A&M right now. Clemson. It's a better defensive line class than, a lot of places. Ohio State's probably the only one that's at least in the conversation right now when you think of, like I said, the usual suspects. But I think what illustrates to me, the quality of the class is Nigel Smith. Nigel Smith would be ranked, if you go all the way back in the history of the recruiting era, if you go all the way back to 2000, Nigel Smith would be the number 1 ranked defensive lineman in the class in 16 of those classes. That's a lot of Stoops classes. That's, albeit some Riley classes, but that's significant. 16 classes since 2000. Nigel Smith would be the top ranked defensive lineman, and nobody talks about him. He's and we got Nigel Smith. That dude is great. Doesn't even go to camps. Doesn't even do anything to pump up that ranking. That dude, all he does is want to play football, and he's locked in. No drama, everything like that. That's how you know. That's how you know that you've got an elite class when you've got a guy like Nigel Smith there, and he's not your highest ranked guy, and he's probably one of your least talked about guys.
Yeah, he is the 82nd overall player on Rivals right now. And his commitment, for some odd reason, and I think it has a lot to do with the fact that the previous D-line commitment was David Stone. And so it's really hard to compare top 10 to 82nd. But even still, and I think it's because everybody knew Nigel was going to Oklahoma, because it was David did a really good job of, building up the drama of this Miami stuff, even with those around the program. And I'll say that I haven't ever said this before, and I'll say this. So I'm in New Jersey. I'm in Ocean City. Parker can tell you, I talked to him the whole way there. We were he can't choose Miami, can he? He just can't do that, can he? Are we gonna get hicksed again? Is this what's gonna happen to us again? Because there was a lot of, at that point, it felt like it was Oklahoma, and it continued to feel like it was Oklahoma. And Miami, I almost feel like David, in the way that he's treating things now, kind of led everybody on a little bit. I'm just going to say it, just kind of, he played the game, not leading on. He played the game really well, even with, I think, Miami coaches and the people, because Parker, as you can attest, they were even going, are we getting Devon Mitchell again? They were saying that behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Were they not? They were like, are we getting our hopes up for this again to watch him choose Oklahoma? And it happened. And that's neither here nor there, but I'm in Ocean City and I get this text from somebody and they said, what's the score and how much time's left? And I tell them, they said, okay, well, let me know when there's 2 minutes to halftime and then let me know when there's 30 seconds to halftime. I got to get something ready. And at that point, and this was like right before kickoff, and at that point, I knew it was Oklahoma. That's the point I knew it was Oklahoma at that time. And so I thought that was interesting. You know, and that wasn't anybody from Norman. I just want to make that clear. Like it was somebody around the whole recruiting stuff. Like they knew what was going on around David more than anybody else. And at that point, that source told me, like straight up, that's when I knew it was Oklahoma at that point. I was like, oh, thank you, Lord, because we made that trip out there and spent all that money for it to go and get Hicks again, just like we did last year with David Hicks. And that was rough, only to be told like 30 minutes prior, like it's going to be A&M. So after he committed to Oklahoma for a while. So that was a big deal. And that means Oklahoma has a chance with the 2024 class and what they've been bringing in through the transfer portal with guys that have eligibility remaining. I don't think they have the D-line talent across the board, even at Cincinnati yet. And I know that's really weird to say because Cincinnati doesn't have some of the higher ranking guys that Oklahoma has across the board. But whatever they got in the water in Cincinnati over the last 5 years, is it not impressive?
Skyline Chili.
Yeah, there you go, Skyline Chili. Is it not impressive how well they've done on the defensive line, particularly the Godfather, Corleone? And the guys that preceded him, they had several NFL guys before that. And it's like, how? They weren't even a P5 program at that point. And they're taking Georgia down to the final minutes. What was that? The Sugar Bowl that happened, correct?
Yeah, gosh, how many years ago was that? Was that the COVID
That was,
year? Or was that 2019?
That was 2019, I believe. 2019 or 2021, one of the two.
Wouldn't have been 2021 because that was
No, it was 2019. It was
college
2019. It was
football
2019 because because Georgia they've made a run since then. And it was one of those two. It doesn't matter. Regardless, how do you do that? It probably was 2020, was it? 2020?
It was 2020.
Just 20. It had to be 2020. Okay, but you're a G5 program and you're taking arguably the best program in college football, and they hadn't won a title yet at that point, but you're taking Georgia and all their 5 stars down to the final minutes. And it wasn't the first time they've done that. They've scared the crap out of people prior to that. Whatever they've done or they did and they continue to do at Cincinnati is super impressive. It's very impressive. And I think you have to take in consideration that area of high school football may be one of the more underrated areas in the nation. Because you look at their roster and it's like Cincinnati.
Ohio's rich.
Yeah, no, it's rich. I think it's super underrated though. Even as rich as it is.
Ohio's rich, but a lot of those guys go to Ohio State. Ohio State, if they're nobody going to Oklahoma State anymore, but Ohio State, if they're really highly ranked, right? Like that's usually that battle that happens. But I mean, keep in mind with that Cincinnati team, does this Cincinnati team have Sauce Gardner, a Desmond Ritter? Like some of these guys, like they experienced a lot of what TCU experienced last year. Was Cincinnati had like the second or third most guys drafted that year after that class, and like top draft picks. Like Sauce Gardner might be the best corner in football right now. Like that's a debate for another day. But like, and Desmond Ritter, I don't think he's that great, but he's winning.
He's a great college quarterback.
Like, but that's what I'm saying. Like, so yes, Cincinnati has had some dudes in the past. Are those dudes on this roster? We'll see. We'll see. They've got some
Corleone is-
NFL bodies.
Yeah.
They've got some NFL bodies, but I don't know. Are we going to look up 3 years from now and say that some people on the Cincinnati team are starters in the NFL from good to elite starters in the NFL? I don't know. But I do know, like I said, you said earlier, it's the coaches respect this team. The coaches respected SMU a lot too. Those press conferences, that media availability was nothing but respect for SMU. We didn't see, obviously, Tulsa. It was more about what are we going to develop? What are we going to do? Hey, like that was a busy week with a lot of other storylines, obviously. So the press conferences were wide ranging. But something we've brought up in media availability with OU consistently is something that I brought up on last week's pregame pod again. And I think we need to bring it up again today. Who's going to lead this team in carries against Cincinnati? Because it's still not clear. I forget who said it last week, but Brandon, it might have been you, Tawi Walker, and he got zero carries.
No,
Like,
I said Sawchuk was going to lead. I even wrote it in OU Insider on my things to watch kind of type deal. Yeah,
but that's my point. It's like there's no through 3 games. We still have no clue who's going to lead the team. You could convince people that, hey, it's going to be the Sawchuk and Barnes show until Sawchuk learns to trust that hamstring and Barnes learns to trust that foot. And you could be equally convinced somebody to say, hey, they gave Major and Tawi a little bit of time off. I know Major's banged up, but they gave him a little bit of time off so they could attack this defensive line, and Tawi's going to lead the team in carries. So what do you guys think going into this game?
It'll be the Caleb Hicks show this weekend.
I'll take Dalen Smothers.
Oh my
Let's
God.
go. He's averaging
I mean,
okay,
no,
has he not looked the best out of everybody not named Tawi Walker so far?
Looks good. I think he's second on the team in yards per carry.
Yeah, he's looked good. He
It's-
makes things happen.
It's
I
an
don't know.
unpredictable backfield situation, right?
I'm gonna
now.
go with Tawi Walker this week. I will say it this week. I'll say Tawi Walker.
Yeah, I think there will be an effort to get him more involved because Brent said it after the game. It wasn't that they wanted to get away from Tawi. It was just that they wanted to get Barnes and Sawchuk more carries, and that was and also the fact that they wanted to primarily attack through the air more so than on the ground against Cincinnati. So it was just, I write it off as a blip on the radar based on the game plan. And I do think, though, it's going to depend on the flow of the game because Tawi's style is so different from Javonte Barnes and Gavin Sawchuk's, right? And so it ultimately, I think, comes down to whether Oklahoma is winning at the line of scrimmage. If you are winning at the line of scrimmage and all you're trying to do is control the pace of play, eat clock, continue to batter that Cincinnati defense into submission, then Tawi Walker is your guy, right? But conversely, if that Cincinnati front four is winning the battle and you're not getting as much of a push up front, well, then maybe you want to put that ball in the hands of a guy like Gavin Sawchuk more because he can get outside the tackles, make stuff happen, elude defenders in the open field, and maybe give you that big play capability that you're going to need against a team like Cincinnati that is pushing you around up front. So I think a lot of it depends on the flow of the game, and that's not I'm not trying to cop out of answering that question, but it really is to say that it's like I don't think we can know for certain until we see how the first quarter of this game goes. That's going to tell us that's going to dictate a lot about what the rest of the game holds as far as backfield splits.
That's fair. We talked about this off air before we got on here. Is Javonte Barnes struggling to see things in the backfield as far and have a good feel for things the way that he used to, as far as like seeing his block, reading his block, seeing the holes, all that type of stuff? Or is it just me? There's a lot of hesitation. I think a prime example, he scored, so I don't want to undermine the situation too much, but prime example is on a goal line. I think it was, I want to say a 3rd and 2 or 2nd and 2, and they're going in left guard, right guard. pinned down and he runs into the back of them. They're pinned down, blocking to the right. He runs into the back of them, bounces backwards because he hit the butt of, I can't remember if it was, it wasn't Bird.
I think
It
it might
had
have been Peyton.
who?
I think it might have been Caden Green.
It may have been Caden Green, actually. I think you're right. And so he hit the butt of Caden Green, bouncing backwards, and then there was such a big hold of the outside that he had the ability to finally go, oh, look, there's massive, Moses partner, the Red Sea wide open to the right, to the left, and he just walks in. And the whole time, all he had to do was take the ball and just literally walk around the corner, and he would have walked in. And he made it very difficult. And that's not the first time I've seen that from him. He's ran into the back of linemen I don't know how many times this year. I don't know if it's just knocking off the rust, but his vision isn't what it was last year, and that's kind of scary a little bit.
Well, with specifically Javonte, I think
I know
it's
that's
something
petty, by the way. I know that's
So-
pettiness after everything.
No,
they've
I
done.
mean it's a window into other struggles, I think. And last year, Eric Gray early in his career used to kind of do the same thing. Used to run into the back of the line. Like a lot of it is like, hey, up tempo means I got to go fast once I get the ball. And one of the coaches told me last year, Eric Gray really started playing like the Eric Gray we knew by the end of the year, or at least by middle of the year and things like that, because he had patience to let things develop and say, hey, once I get the ball, the hurry up offense is in between snaps. Like once you get the ball snapped, like you don't have to rush into things, right? Well, I think part of it though is he's not allowing himself to be patient because he just doesn't trust his legs right now. Like that foot, like he does the like 3 or 4 step stop and then he turns. I think that whether subconsciously or consciously, he's trying to get places quickly because he knows he's going to have to slow down a bit in order to make a cut. How many times did we see last week he would get going and then he would kind of shuffle to a stop and then try and get upfield and he can't accelerate. Instead, what he was doing last year is he would plant that foot and then go north-south. So you're not seeing that this year. And I think when Levy said, hey, we need to get 2 and 27 going, I don't think that meant we just need to get them more snaps. It was, hey, Javonte needs to see the field better and needs to trust that leg, and he's not going to do it in practice. He needs to do it against live bullets. And I think the same thing is happening with Gavin Sawchuk with his hamstring subconsciously, because he's going down the sideline at one point last week, and he was on the side that I was sitting. So he was on the east side there.
You're talking about the
and he
swing
just
pass. Yeah.
And he just like stopped. He's the fastest dude on the field. Like he could have got to the edge, or at least if he didn't get to the edge, he at least picks up 2 or 3 more yards, but he stops and tries to kind of dance a little bit. I'm like, dude, you got to trust your legs and just know that you're faster and go. And that's what I think when, like I said, when Jeff Lebby says we got to get 2 and 27 going, I don't think it is we need more snaps. It's, hey, we're going to need these dudes to reach our highest level of run game, and they are not seeing it right now because they do not trust their legs. And I think that's what you're seeing with both of them.
So I agree with you on they got to get going, the confidence and trust in themselves. I agree with that 100% because I think both of them favor their previous injuries a little bit subconsciously, and they don't realize they're doing it in a game. But I also think that, to your point on the reps, I think what made them so good in the Cheez-It Bowl with 3rd and 4th string guys on the offensive line blocking for them was that they got all the snaps leading up to that in bowl practices. Right now, they're not getting in rhythm. They're sharing a quarter of the snaps with Tawi Walker and Marcus Major, if that. I don't know what the deal is there. And I think to some extent, Lebby is saying we've got to figure out if, we got to get 2 and 20. I think he knows 2 and 27 are his best 2 running backs. I think he knows it. DeMarco knows it. Everybody knows it. But I think they're afraid to just let them loose because they've had such nagging injuries with the foot and with the hamstring. And I think subconsciously, I think that goes to on the coaches just as much as it goes on to the players a little bit. Like they're not letting them get in the game and just like they did with Eric Gray last year and Javonte. Like you knew those two were going to get all the reps. You knew they were going to get all the snaps. Marcus Major got a little bit of the snaps before he got injured, but all year long, you knew that Gray and Barnes were going to get all the snaps and all the handoffs during the game. Therefore, they were in rhythm the whole year. That foot bothered Barnes last year, the whole season, and he toughed it out. I don't understand. Like it has a lot to do with rhythm, and they have no rhythm. They're not in the flow of the game. You can't hand them the ball twice and pull them out and go, all right, your turn, whoever else is coming in. Like, and this isn't a knock on DeMarco or anybody, like, because I think DeMarco is arguably the best running back coach in college football up to this point. It's one of the top recruiters, at least. And he knows how to do it. He's an MVP guy in the NFL. But I think they're trying to make everybody happy. And instead of just going, you know what, guys, these are our two, and we're riding them. And if you remember correctly, it took through 3 or 4 games last year for them to go, okay, it's the Eric Gray and Javonte Barnes show. So now maybe we may be seeing, I said here and I've even predicted Tawee Walker was going to get the most carries, and I'm just doing that off of the previous 3 games.
Talking yourself out of it.
I'm talking myself out of it right now. I won't be shocked if 2 and 27 get most of the carries going into this. I need to do some digging on that. So hopefully on OU Insider, I'll have some better answers for you after I make some calls today. But they got to get those guys going. They have to get them going. And that starts in the week of preparation. It does. It starts in the week of preparation. You can't just go, okay, they're back. Let's hand them the ball this week. It doesn't work like that. And that's why they've looked so lackadaisical and just slow. And we know both those dudes can freaking fly. We've seen it. Parker, you want to add to this?
I don't know. I like, on the one hand, I think it is concerning that neither of those guys have really taken off during non-conference play, even if only for a brief moment in time. But I also think there's part of me, it's just like, well, is it working out early season kinks for those guys individually? It might be. And so, again, I am very much approaching this Cincinnati game with regard to the backfield. The way I'm approaching it is, okay, let's see what these backs can do individually against a front four that's going to provide a challenge up front and make things difficult on the backs as well as the Oklahoma offensive line. It should be more difficult to establish the run in this game than it has been in any of the first 3 weeks for Oklahoma. And maybe, again, the Sooner strategy on Saturday, much like it was against Tulsa, isn't to establish the run. Maybe it's just to let Dylan Gabriel drop back and pick apart that Bearcat secondary. But I do think that the way that these backs individually perform against Cincinnati in this football game is going to tell us a lot about their usage going forward, because this, to me, is where you can truly start to ride the hot hand. And I think there was some validity taken out of the whole hot hand narrative last week after Tawee Walker had 142 yards total against SMU and then didn't touch the ball against Tulsa. But it's one thing to pop off in non-conference play against teams that you should run circles around. It's another thing to excel against Big 12 opponents that have talent on both sides of the ball, and especially a program like Cincinnati that, as we mentioned, has talent in the front seven. So this, to me, is where you're going to legitimately see a hot hand emerge for the first time, whether that is Tawee Walker or whether that is Sawchuck or Barnes.
So does that not, I want to, left guard situation has been a problem for Oklahoma a little bit this year.
Caden Green, baby, bring him home.
That's what I was about to ask. Do they start Caden Green?
I think they should. And this isn't I don't want to say anything bad about Savion Byrd, But
He's been knocked in. He got knocked in the head. I don't know. It
yeah,
depends on if he
no,
gets cleared of the. He's got to pass protocol first.
right. But I think we were better
What about
suited
Everett?
to.
Everett, excuse me.
I just think Caden Green gives you something different at left guard
Well,
than whoever else you might roll in there and relieve of Savion Bird. So if Bird is out this weekend, yes, I think you start Caden Green.
Travis, Everett, Green. You say Green, but what about Everett? Like, what's your thoughts on him?
I think I think, yeah, he's got experience. Not quite at the level of, that you would like, but he's got experience. Caden Green doesn't. But the body of Caden Green and Caden came in after not playing guard since like ninth grade. Like he's not played guard. He had 4 days to get ready to play guard, and he goes in there and yeah, he screwed up a couple times, but I mean he hasn't played guard in so long. You give him a full week of practice where he can sit there and say, okay, I know what I did wrong. Like I think he can get around on those GT he can pull on the GT counter. Like I'm very high on Caden Green. I think he is our best option at left guard. And it sounds crazy, but when Savion Bird comes back healthy, I might still hold that same opinion that Caden Green is our best option moving forward at left guard.
And I don't want this to be interpreted as a knock on Troy Everett because it's not, and I don't intend it to be. But I think Troy Everett is your new Robert Conjal in that he's an insurance policy that you can deploy in multiple situations at multiple positions. You bring him in for his versatility, you bring him in for his experience, but I think you also bring him in with the expectation that, okay, there are some young up and comers in this program that flat out are more physically gifted than a guy like that, just have some God-given measurables and intangibles that make them, well, at least give them the potential to be elite. And Caden Green is certainly one of those guys. And so if Caden Green is ready after a full week of practice to play left guard against Cincinnati, I would say you play the kid at left guard against Cincinnati. That's the way I look at it.
I don't think that's a knock on Troy Everett at all.
Yeah.
To me, that's actually a compliment because Conjal was a bad dude. Wherever he went, you always knew you were going to get good play out of him. Whether it was center, right guard, left guard, didn't matter. You knew he was going to do his job and he was going to do it really well. Like you did not worry. When you saw him in there, you knew that he was going to be a road grader. You knew he wasn't going to miss on his pass blocks. Like you knew that. Like he was just not the most physically gifted guy, but he was so technically sound in everything that he did that you knew that he was going to do his job. And I think Troy Everett, and I won't say this about Conjal because I think Conjal was a really good player. Matter of fact, there was a point in time that Conjal was trying to come back this year. Like I know that for a fact. Like he was trying to get back on the roster. And I don't think the NCAA, I don't even think it was the NCAA more alone, that it was some other things that held that up, and it wasn't Oklahoma. It was other schools that may have held that out a little bit, from my understanding, and made that an issue. As far as like a waiver potentially. But I mean, he was good. Conjal was great. And I think Everett is probably a little bit more talented than him. Probably a lot more talented than him. I think physically gifted, more gifted. So I think at the end of the day, you get 3 more years of that. At some point in time, Troy Everett's going to be your starter. I think it's going to be hard. I'm interested to see the battle between him and Bates at center next year, because both of them are really good at center. So that's going to be interesting. Bates just has some nastiness in him. That dude has got some nasty in him. He just doesn't care. He fights everybody. And you got to love that. That brings a little bit of tenacity to that offensive line. All right. So let's wrap this up. Score, why you predict that score, and who do you think are going to be? Predict your players of the game, offense and defense as well.
I have Oklahoma 45-21 in this game. So win and cover for the Sooners. Is it a sexy answer? No, but I would say the MVP is Dylan Gabriel offensively. I he's it's interesting because throughout the week you've started to see some folks nationally who are already having the Heisman Trophy conversation. Like they're not throwing Dylan Gabriel's name out liberally yet, but he is getting mentioned as somebody that very quietly has had a really strong start to the season. So I think that carries over this week against Cincinnati. I'll say he throws 4 more touchdown passes. And I think all in all, I expect the passing game to carry Oklahoma in this game more so than the rushing attack because Cincinnati is far more vulnerable in the secondary than they are up front. And Jeff Lebby, no doubt, realizes that as well as anybody. So I think Dylan Gabriel gets the monkey off his back, beats Cincinnati for the first time. Sooners win 45-21. And I will say the defensive MVP. I will say you get a Woody Washington interception. Say Woody Washington makes a big play, creates a turnover, helps swing the momentum in this football game, and I'll give him my defensive MVP honors.
Okay. It's a good one.
All right. That's good stuff. I like that. I like that a lot, especially the Dylan Gabriel love. I do think when he plays with confidence, as we're seeing right now, he is dotting people up. If you can continue to put the ball in his hands and give him an opportunity to go downfield with it, I think good things are on the horizon. But I'm going to go with something similar, but 42-17. I still think we keep everybody below that 20 mark. So 42-17. In the spirit of picking other MVPs, I'm going to go with Nick Anderson as your offensive MVP. Everybody knows that I've been the highest on Nick Anderson out of anybody, specifically far more than Parker Thune. Anyways, I think Nick Anderson, and here's why. I think Nick Anderson schematically is going to make, and personnel-wise, going to make Cincinnati do different things. And I think they're going to employ him on a lot more snaps because after watching what he did and how many people it takes to bring him down, and you're going to have a safety over there, I think they're going to be dropping more back in coverage. I don't think you necessarily have to do that, no disrespect intended, to like a Jaleel Farouk, because he's not going to absolutely blow by you. Whereas you're not going to do that with maybe some other receivers. You're going to have to do that with Nick Anderson. So if you're having trouble running the ball, like what a lot of us think we might against this stout Cincinnati defensive line, I think that you'll get Nick Anderson out there to pull another safety out there and have them drop back in coverage. And I think he gets 2 more touchdowns. That's all that dude does is score touchdowns when he catches the ball. He's got 5 catches this year. 3 of them have gone for touchdowns. He's averaging like at 39 yards a catch or something crazy like that. So Nick Anderson is your offensive MVP, straight from the president of the Nick Anderson fan club, right here. Travis Davidson heard it first. And defensive MVP, I got to go Danny Stutzman. We saw the best game that he's played in a Sooner uniform was against SMU. But if you took a stretch of the best stretch of football that Danny Stutzman has played, it has been the Cheez-It Bowl until now. I mean, yeah, he had a missed tackle last week. He had the pick 6 to make up for it. He's been all over the place. He leads the Big 12 in tackles again. He's got 30 tackles on the year. Second is Kip Lewis with 15. He's doubled up the second person when it comes to tackles. And he's not doing it like he did it last year with just a sheer amount of snaps. And the guy that plays the most amount of snaps happens to probably have the most amount of tackles. He's doing it with quality. Multiple coaches now have said that 28, man, he sniffed it out. He's ahead of the game. He's 1 step ahead, 2 steps ahead of what we're trying to do. That is a Danny Stutzman that not only knows what to do, but why to do it now. And I think that's why, especially against a quarterback that's going to try and run on you a little bit, I think he's going to have a massive game.
Those are really good picks. Okay, so you got 42-17. What was yours? 41-24, right? What?
45-21. He's muted. 45-21.
I thought I was unmuting myself. I was actually muting myself. So yes, 45-21 is what I had.
Okay. I will go with, I said 34-24 yesterday. I'll go 34-17 Oklahoma. Excuse me, 31-17 Oklahoma. My offensive guy will be Jalil Farouk. I am the leader of the Jalil Farouk fan club. I still think he might be the best receiver on the OU roster. And as far as defense goes, I will say I'm going to go Peyton Bowen. I think that he finally gets that pick, and I think he gets a sack this weekend. I think Cheetah is a big deal when it comes to containing Emery Jones, and I think Peyton Bowen has a big ball game because of that. So, all right. That's going to do it for this version of the OU Insider pregame podcast, brought to you by Olipop. Again, thank you, Olipop, for being our proud sponsor, title sponsor. We have some more sponsors coming for you guys, and we're going to have some little segments that they're going to be sponsoring during the podcast. So stay tuned for that. And we also have a tailgate. The tailgate is happening. Iowa State will be on Lindsay Street. We want to continue to remind you guys that. Listen, pay attention to the podcast that Parker and I are on. We will give you more details. Pay attention to OU Insider. Pay attention to Twitter. More details to come on where that's going to be on Lindsay Street.
Also, people have asked what the fee is to going to. I got tongue twisted there. People have asked what the fee will be to get into the tailgate. All you're going to need to get into the tailgate is proof of a subscription to OU Insider. As long as you are an OU Insider member, guess what? You can come tailgate.
Correct. All right. And we know we have thousands and thousands and thousands of those people at OU football games. So, hey, we're going to have little brochure things for you guys to come up to the OU Insider desk. It'll have free promo code there for you to put in. You can go sign up, show us that you signed up, and you can come in and enjoy the party with all the TV, with all the food, with all the drinks, all that type of stuff. And you get to hang out with Parker, me, maybe some Travis Davidson, Jesse, Brian, all those guys. We will be there to talk to you guys and hang out pregame until we have to go do our jobs during the game. So, good way for you all to grow the community together, get to know each other, and expand on that. And we want to thank Russell Jenkins for helping us out with that and his company. It has been amazing, and it was his idea. He's done all the legwork. We are just helping in that capacity, and he's helping us, and we can't thank him enough. Also, subscribe to OUinsider.com VIP if you want to do the tailgate. And if you want to win tickets, we're giving away OU Texas tickets with the sign-ups already done. The drawing entry is already over. We will be giving that away Thursday on the 21st. And after that, that's it. I mean, we will be giving Iowa State tickets away here next week, several of those. So sign up if you want to do that and get OU Insider member information, and subscribe to this YouTube. Give 5 stars or thumbs up, whatever it is on whatever podcast platform. And thank you guys again for listening. All right, that's going to do it for this version of the OU Insider Under the Visor Sooners pregame podcast. For Travis Davison, for Parker Thune, my name is Brandon Drum. You guys have a blessed day.